Welcome back to Uncharted Narratives, where nurses lead the charge for real healthcare change. I'm so excited to introduce Whitney Line, DNP RN, Global Healthcare Innovation and Insights Lead, and a Doctor of Nursing Practice graduate in Health Innovation and Leadership from the University of Minnesota. This is the nurse who delivered a commencement speech declaring, "This degree is a declaration that we nurses lead," calling nurses systems shapers, boundary spanners, and designers who belong from bedside to boardroom. As a passionate advocate for clinician-led innovation, Whitney's turned her frontline experience into human-centered solutions that break through silos and drive real change. She's passionate about continuous learning, turning COVID lessons into future-proof strategies, and empowering nurses to embrace their natural problem-solving superpowers for global impact. Whitney proves nurses don't just care for patients, we reimagine healthcare. If you're ready to step into your leadership power, this episode's for you. Let's get started.
Hi, good afternoon for me and for you, Whitney, at the same time. Whitney Line, I'm very excited to having you. Finally, we make it. You were busy for your study and your business, and thank you for accepting my invitation. Today, I will talk with you about the nursing and clinician driving the real change in the healthcare. So when I start to think about innovation, there is no better place or no better person to discuss this more than you, Whitney. So Whitney, as you are leader and who has make the journey from the bedside for the innovation and inspiring other generation and other nurses. I'm very excited to having you today. And you can see I can't speak because I see your value and your impact. I went through one of your live and realized how much you are valuable. So today I'm extremely excited. I will leave it for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm just as equally as excited to be here. I absolutely love expanding my network, meeting people who are just as excited and interested in innovation, expanding kind of the scope and the idea of what nurses can do for healthcare. And so I'm really looking forward to just talking and seeing kind of where the conversation takes us. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, I will try my best to discover and to discuss a lot of the topics where I see it's more important and topic because there's a few of nursing leaders, they are talking about innovation and product development and product management. You are one of those few. So I don't have that space every time to speak. So I will ask you a lot and hope
Yeah.
you accept all those questions. And this is came from me and from the team. They are working with me because we are excited to know more about you. So I will start as you are worn a lot of hats and still you are worn those hats from your bedside to transplant coordinator, product developer, and working in the global innovation leader. What inspired you to take so many different roles and how your experience from the bedside shaped you to do those roles?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll even preface all of this kind of by saying that I really try to be as transparent as possible. There are a lot of spaces that are really accessible for people who might be at my level or above my level, who are trying to get to, the C-suite or kind of that hyper executive level. And how do they level up and how do they get there? But there's not a ton of outlets that I've ever experienced or seen that really talks about to kind of those of us or those that are still working at the bedside or where their passion is at the bedside and they want to remain at the bedside. And so I want to try to be as transparent as possible and kind of debunk a lot of sort of myths or preconceived notions that it takes someone that is hyper specific or you need to be really lucky. I mean, anybody can move in whichever direction their soul is calling them to move towards. You just really, it's going to sound hokey, but you really just need to have a clear understanding of yourself and really believe in yourself. To more specifically answer your question, I am the type of person that has just never ever been comfortable with the status quo. I've constantly, my entire life, been someone that has asked, well, why are we doing that? That doesn't make any sense, right? You're always kind of ruffling the feathers. And so when I was at my first started into nursing, I was at a level 1 trauma center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I learned so much being at that trauma center. But I also learned a lot about what I really enjoyed about nursing, and what I was able to see, I think, especially at this community center, trauma center, it's a safety net facility, was really the systems of healthcare that was allowing some members of our community to thrive and really isolating other members of our community. And so I really fell in love with sort of the care coordination piece. So understanding that care doesn't just end when they leave the hospital, but that there's really necessary pieces that need to be in place so that that population or those people can really thrive to get them to the next place that they need to be. In addition, I fell in love with organ transplant. I love kidney transplant. You can actually see my painting in the background it looks like watercolors, but it's actually kidney transplant. And my mom had a kidney transplant when I was a little kid, and so it was something that was very near and dear to my heart. And so I kind of naturally fell into it and was really good at moving mountains within the healthcare system and understanding the systems again at which we're working and functioning and operating within, but still just never being content with that status quo, right? So I would constantly be identifying all of these problems that are happening around us, and where maybe a lot of people just kind of say, well, it's just the way it is. Oh, we've always done it that way. What are you going to do? You're one person. I've never been someone that's been comfortable with those answers. I have to go out and fix it. I have to go out and solve it. And so having that sort of just mentality and natural sort of drive within me, I'm guessing is pretty common to the people that are watching your podcast, right? So I'm guessing this is going to be resonating with quite a few people where they're saying, I'm like that too, right? I would imagine you're probably very similar to that or
Yeah,
not.
just
Would you
you
say?
nail it, because I see all the nurses, they are built in with the problem solving, and every time they with day-to-day operation, they find a way to find a solution for what's coming on. But some of those nurses, they take it extremely up and try to find a permanent solution, not temporary solution. And here where what I can see from your side, and this is something maybe we will discuss it later, how those people can take it further. But right now, I would like to ask you, how did working as a nurse and educator help you to understand what really matter in the healthcare innovation?
Well, so I'll talk a little bit about my role and when I transitioned into industry and kind of what was the purpose of my role at and then now Solventum. And so I'll also maybe preface this with a disclaimer that, my conversation today and my views are mine and mine alone. They are not representative of 3M Healthcare or of Solventum.
Absolutely.
But so when I first started, my role was titled an application engineer, which tells you nothing, which told me nothing either. And that's really the first indication that we have that industry and really higher levels of the healthcare system don't know what to do with us. They don't really know what to do with nurses outside of that small picture, that small scope that you imagine a nurse to be. They don't quite know what to do with us. But really, my role there was to be a liaison, right? Kind of in between healthcare and so all of the products, right, that we had sold. So I was your global expert on Tegaderm, right? So all of your IV dressing portfolio, Kuros caps, and then we would kind of cross train into some of the other portfolios. But ultimately, I was the global expert on that and working within R&D. So we would do things really kind of end-to-end innovation. So we would be helping with identifying the clinical challenges that are happening globally that we need to innovate within. And then, even small step changes on various products that need to be made. They would bring them to us. We'd be embedded very deeply into that R&D team to be able to say, yes, this works. No, this doesn't. This is why we need to tweak it in, this way, that way. We need to go out and get more information. You would go out and get that information, et cetera, to developing these new products, to then seeing them through to launching them into the field, getting the feedback again from your customers globally to identify, did this work? Did this not? All while following regulations and regulatory practices of all of the countries that you're deploying them within. But then in addition, supporting those products out in the field. And my very favorite part was always really about the change management. And again, it's like that care continuity that has to go into sort of product delivery and support. So one of the things that I'm constantly touting is you cannot drop off a box of product to a facility, to a nursing unit and say, thank you so much, we're done here. Absolutely not. It is impossible, especially when you're talking about IV site management and vascular access care and maintenance. With all of the changing regulations and all of the sort of growth that is constantly happening in healthcare and healthcare innovation, you really need to be a partner to the community, which means partner to your customers, partner to the healthcare facilities. And so one of my favorite things to do is I would just build CE programs. And so one of my favorite ones that's kind of pulling in my brain right now is about clinically indicated care and maintenance of the vascular line, right? So we were shifting from you change that dressing every 3 days to you change it when it's clinically indicated, right? So just giving a facility that now just go ahead and change it when it's clinically indicated. What on earth does that even mean? What does that mean for your CLABSI reporting? How do we roll something out? How do we support the change management within the hospitals, et cetera? So it's not just about this one little product, it's everything else that is wrapped around it and in supporting. So that piece became just a really kind of deep integral role or part of my role at 3M Healthcare. And so when you ask kind of how did me being a nurse sort of help me in that, it's exactly it. It's identifying the places that really need the care, right? And then pulling all of that information together and kind of being that central conduit for everybody, and then giving the care where it's most needed and desired.
You had the fortunate to work with one of the big leaders worldwide to bring the medical product, and here we can see your experience as a nursing background. Myself also, I had it working with the software development, so as a nurse work with the development team, try to find something there. And when I had the time playing the product manager role, so where I sit with the end user to understand their problem and their challenge to build this for the roadmap. So here I can understand the same things were happening. But what happened every time anyone hear innovation, is take them, okay, I need to go for the lab, put this Google, try to think out of the box. But I see this is can happen in the hospital with the same department or with the same resource within the hospital. Try to build that community, try to build that culture within the same team, and encourage the nurses and the clinician to speak up and find a solution for their problem. If they don't have a solution there, maybe they can hire a third party. But this is role is inactive somehow. And here, my question for you: what is your definition for innovation?
Innovation is such a buzzword right now, and maybe it's because I'm working heavily in innovation that everything is innovative and we have to innovate, and it's kind of thrown around very loosely, and it's also used very interchangeably with invention, right? And you can kind of argue the semantics of all of that kind of till you're blue in the face. But ultimately, being innovative is being able to design, develop, bring something forward that is new or a new way currently, in order to improve, to better the lives, especially within healthcare, of your target in a way that is faster, that is cheaper, that is more effective in meeting their needs.
Very simple. What is this is the things where you can find a new solution with maybe with the same resource. That doesn't mean to create something new. Try to different way, make it faster, easier, cost effective, and so on. So I would like to know from your experience, what is the big roadblock or a little buckle in any innovation healthcare, and what is the practical step the team can take it to overcome them?
I'll always say, it always depends, right? It depends who you are in the space. Research and development is very expensive. Regulatory pathways, if we're talking about medical products, can be very challenging, very complicated. And so if you're a larger player, the roadblocks for you are going to be very, very different than the roadblocks for, somebody who is kind of just newly getting started in this space, or even a tech startup, for example. I would say, so, if we're kind of wanting to speak more to those who are more innovative in spirit and are interested in kind of stepping into this space and kind of looking at, the bedside nurse who's been told, all they do are workarounds, when really you're not doing workarounds, you're innovating at the bedside and in real time to improve your patients' lives in a better, faster way. I would say the biggest challenges, this is going to sound so hokey, but it's so true, is that it's really ourselves. I
When you mean ourselves, you mean our
I
mindset?
see it's our mindset, and it's really ourselves as, I think, the nursing profession. I think that for many decades, the nursing profession has been kind of put into its own box as someone who follows. You are to follow the physician's orders, and that's about it, right? You kind of are the follower of within healthcare. And over the last, I'm going to just roughly say 20 some years, I think that has been rapidly evolving to no longer be the case. We are collaborative, we work in partnership, right? We operate under a very strict scope of practice. So I'm certainly not encouraging people to step outside of their scope of safety and scope of practice. But I think that, for that nurse, for again, to go back to that example of you're just told it's a workaround, stop doing that. You're going to get your hand slapped. What you're really doing is being innovative, right? And so what we need is to create better culture in those spaces so that we can self-identify, number one, this is innovative. There's clearly a problem here. There's a problem that needs solving. So how can we support that person to go ahead and actively solve that problem so that everybody can benefit from the innovation that they're doing at the bedside? So I would really say and when I say ourselves, I think it's our profession. And I think that we really need to start standing up and using our voice, and I dare say sort of pushing back to be able to identify that we are innovating. Our voice is incredibly powerful. It is absolutely needed. And this sort of next wave of this future of healthcare, I think having the voice of nursing be very central to that, we are going to see incredible positive changes that we've never been able to see before.
Speaking on our voice and your voice as a nurse. So we know sometimes something is happening wrong on the hospital, so we report this as an incident. So this is maybe a good opportunity for us to see the root causes for that and innovate something or discover some way to do that. So I will leave it aside. I will not discuss this, but sometimes no need to stay or wait until we have a problem. Sometimes as a staff nurse, as a frontline, I came across something I thought maybe is good to implement it and to have to good. Assuming I went for my leadership and step up and speak up about some solution. What I'm expecting and here based on my experience, it's not your business. Thank you. It's not your business. We will leave it for other department or other thing. So I want to ask you, have you ever find, even without mentioning name of any organization facility, they have a good setup where they encourage everyone to come and work together on certain things to develop it and listening, not stopping them to be on the silos.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So there are some facilities. I was actually just visiting one a couple of weeks ago, and their value analysis committee was set up in a very collaborative, sort of transdisciplinary manner. And so the voices of those that are really doing the work are very well represented at the table. And so encouraging that, pushing your leadership toward creating those spaces of collaboration and making sure that those voices are heard is obviously incredibly powerful. Now, these facilities are still challenged with making the case for those products, right? Because whether we like it or not, hospitals, and I'm talking in the United States, right? Our facilities are hospitals. It comes down to money. It comes down to funding. It comes down to budget. And as nurses, at least my training and just about everybody else that I've ever spoken with, we do not talk about money. It's a swear word, right? You are not supposed to think about necessarily what this is going to cost. You have to get the patient everything that they need, the best tools, the best care, right? Regardless of the funds. But I think that now, as we talk about sort of modern nursing, is a significant miss in nursing education. I think that we have to be better about talking about the finances of the facilities that we're working in, better about understanding them, how our roles impact them, and vice versa. And then educate ourselves. So either within our nursing schools and our education departments or within the facility to be able to put forth a really good value proposition, to be able to say, this is the product, this is why it's needed. And you have to be able to show that in a dollar value as well.
Absolutely.
So
And
educating yourself on those pieces. Yeah.
from my podcast, I interviewed different guests and they have different background. The issue till now, we are at 2025 till now, and we have one assumption, one outcome when I get in the nursing. So the outcome, I will go for the hospital or whatever in the same setup or manner. They don't think now, okay, how I can graduate those to be, for example, with the research or with the research and development, how to be in the consulting firm, how to be more about knowing about forecasting, what is the market needs, all those market analysis, all those is something is not considered. And till now, we see the turnover is high, but never thought, okay, how I can solve that, how I can utilize them. One of the things I frequently speak about it when I used to work with the hospital, when I sit with the hospital, try to understand what the requirement to implement a new software. Most of the time, they bring non-end user, which the nurses, to be part from this. And if they bring them, they are not the decision maker. They are collaborative with them, but the final call for the nursing. And one of the things I see it maybe is also bad for the nursing. They don't try to evolve themselves and learn and to know how to speak about their requirement or their need and how to position themselves out of the bedside, because their care or their importance and their focus only on the patient. But wherever we do it outside, it is for the patients. Their involvement, it's sometimes real. And you nail it and you answer it. So for sake of the time, we cannot stop here. We can speak a lot about that, but I would like to know more about you, Whitney. So during the pandemic, everyone not working in the healthcare sectors as a frontline, they stay in the home. But for you, what I understand based on my research and prepare for this episode, you are not. You played a key role with the 3M. You mentioned them, so for that, I will put their name there as a global COVID-19, especially around the respiratory protection. What you did learn about the innovation in crisis work and under the pressure across all the team, and how you support the frontline staff.
I could talk about this for so long. There's so many pieces and learnings from this. I'll start with how I came to be on the COVID-19 response team. So in my division, when I was at 3M Healthcare, we did not sell medical respirators. Okay. And medical respirators, I'm talking about the masks that you wear in your face. Sometimes people get confused with that. And that lived in another division. And that was because 90% of those respirators worn were being distributed into industrial channels. So your construction workers, painters, etc. Only about 10% of respirators were being sold into hospitals. And so when you have those kinds of numbers, there's just not a ton of support that's needed for medical respirators within the hospital. However, when COVID hit, that number completely flipped. And now 90% of the respirators were being pushed into medical channels. And so that division, not being a medical division, naturally said, we don't know how to talk to healthcare. We don't know what healthcare needs. We don't have anybody within our division that has a healthcare background. What do we do? And so they came to me and said, we need somebody that can become a global expert on respirators. And I said, I don't know anything about respirators. And they said, well, you do now. And much like everybody else during COVID, that was sort of the impetus, right? It was, I don't know how to do this. That's unfortunate, right? The ship is in motion. The train is heading down the tracks. We all have to jump on. And so through partnership with this division, and with their industrial hygienists, their incredibly intelligent engineers, we really identified ways that we needed to support the healthcare community with the use of medical respirators. And so what I learned, again, it's kind of the similar themes that sort of keep coming back up of nursing, really, which is you're identifying the spaces that really need the support, and then you're pulling in all of the people that need to be there in order to craft that support, and then you're delivering it to them. And so for one of the major, well, there was lots of challenges, but some of the major challenges was there are significant regulations around the use of respirators, right? And a lot of those regulations, unfortunately, hadn't really been looked at or changed for 25 some years. So they were pretty outdated. And when you're in the pandemic, you still have to follow regulations. And so we do know and probably remember that a lot of the regulations were sort of changing on a sometimes daily basis over what you can do, what you can't do. And we were identifying that, what the FDA is saying and what OSHA is saying and what the NHS is saying, all of these pieces, they're not lining up, right? Even though they all kind of fall under the same house, the left hand doesn't necessarily talk to the right hand as much as we'd love it if they did. And so that right there was one of the pieces that I had identified really early and was really pushing the organization toward. It is part of our duty to be able to make sense of this and to push this out in a way that is digestible, that is consumable and actionable for our customers, right? To be able to say, this is what you need to pay attention to. This is how you can go ahead and execute this so that you can, the things that you can be thinking about, which is taking care of yourself and your patients confidently, they can then go out and do that. So I became an expert on regulatory within the United States, at least during COVID-19, which is not my personality whatsoever. I am not a deep kind of blue data-driven regulatory analyst.
Yes, you are.
God bless those people. That's not who I am. I don't want to be, but that's the thing, right? It's like, too bad, right? You got to do it. And then the other piece is like all of the back orders, right? And the challenges that were happening with one week you have this style of respirator, the next week you have this style of respirator. And again, those regulations, well, you need to be fit tested to each of your respirators in order to confidently wear them, et cetera. And so really pushing to identify that, hey, this is what our customers need. They need these answers. And it is up to us to be able to get them the answers as best we can. And then again, to compile it in a way that is understandable, that is digestible, consumable, and then again, that you can actually take action on and go about and meet the needs of your patients.
Lovely, lovely. So from this experience and the pandemic, I know a lot of us and all of us, we have learned big lessons from pandemic. However, we start to slow down with this after the pandemic and we start to take it, let's say, more comfort for that. So from your experience, how can healthcare system be better prepared for the next big challenge? And this is mainly particularly, you are speaking now for the leader and decision maker on healthcare system. So what you advise them to be prepared for the next challenge? Hopefully, no, we don't need it, but.
Yeah. So interesting that you ask that. We had convened a panel, and this was another sort of driver of mine while at 3M, was that it's really important to me to listen to the voices of, what I and what a lot of other people call the novice expert. So these aren't your, KOL podium speakers, highly polished. These are people who are delivering the care every single day. And to start listening to maybe a more cross professional, interdisciplinary type group of individuals. And so we convened a panel of respiratory experts that we identified during the pandemic, which was a home infusion RN who, was obviously in the community each and every day, but was also really was really deeply involved in standing up their hospital at home program, but this is a relatively small kind of community hospital. We had another ICU nurse, right, to come and talk about their perspective. She wrote a book actually called Just Breathe, I believe. It's phenomenal. If anyone's wanting to sit back and kind of remember COVID, there might be not a ton of appetite for it, but it is a beautifully written book. And then we had our industrial hygienist, who was obviously very deeply involved in pulling all of those regulatory pieces together and what do we do within. So, and then some infection preventionists as well that came, and we really said, what did we learn? What did we do well? What do we need to do better as a healthcare system? And so that's a paper I would be very happy to share with you, the citation within that, so that you guys can absolutely go ahead and read it. And then I think the main pieces that really jumped out isn't going to surprise anybody, but it's really about being more cross collaborative and pulling in the different disciplines to be helping to make those decisions, and not only doing it in times of crisis, but to be, we call it in my kind of innovation scope, boundary spanning, right? To really more deeply understand the disciplines that you're working within, so that when that does pop up, you have a deeper background knowledge of the system that you're operating within. So that's the largest piece that really came out of it. And then the secondary piece of that is a communication framework that was developed, which allows you to provide clear direction when you're communicating with a large healthcare system, when you're communicating guidance, policy, education, et cetera. And so, it's the SARA communication framework. And so that's another additional piece that you can take and really apply it, not just during, a high level pandemic, but you can sort of use it to do a better job of deploying your information out, again, in a way that is digestible, that is consumable, and again, that's actionable as well.
Lovely. And I think this is also aligned with what you have said before. So when we discussed this about product development, where we need to complete the cycle and get the feedback and have a multidisciplinary team working together and collaborate. So this is what makes sense. And we discovered this based on what you have said on the pandemic, which we need to foster this culture across all the healthcare sectors in order to get that input from different one and make sure we are ready for the futures and make it the floor for everyone. So you told us about your involvement in educating the product team and help them with the vascular access and respiratory product. And when vascular access, but the dressing, you change that from 2 to 3 times per day where medical necessary. How do you make sure new product actually meet the needs of the clinician and the patient? Assuming you are not aware about this line or this specialty and never have that experience, like what you have mentioned right now with the regulatory body during the COVID, you've been forced to be data driven and follow that. So how I can in this position, if I have to use my skill set as a nurse, okay, we discuss nurse can play a major role, but let be more practical. How?
Mm-hmm. It's what I'm hyper focused on right now is human-centered design thinking, and really having the human and the person that you're designing for at the very center from the very beginning. So when we're talking about like the work that I'm currently doing on my innovation team is going out, deeply understanding the spaces that our customers are working within, understanding their challenges, identifying these sort of problems to be solved, but then not even necessarily taking that at face value and probing that a little bit deeper to say, is this a problem? Why is this a problem? What are the factors that are contributing to this problem? And then when you bring it back and you do start developing, if that's something that's been decided that makes sense, keeping that human and that customer or whomever you're developing for at the center throughout that product development process is going to give you such a smoother transition downstream that it will be almost seamless when you finally do get that product into the field. But you have to really start looking upstream and starting your development with the human in mind.
Lovely. So I totally understand that. And I told you when we connect, I came across one of your interview on live, and what you have said in that live make me fall in love from the first time I hear that, because it's music in my ear and I like it a lot. But I know you have a lot of advice to you can share with us, and I see you as a good role model to be for the new nurse generation and also the older generation. But sometimes we have restriction, we have limitation. Sometimes hospital they are not ready, whatever the reason. So I don't want to blame anyone at all. I want from you, what advice do you have for nurses or clinicians who want to get involved in the product development or leadership but are not sure where to start?
Yeah, within product development and leadership, or you broke up at the end, so I just want to make sure I hear the question
My
clearly.
question was, where they can start to get involved in product development, as example, not necessarily, or leadership, but are not sure where to start. So my aiming from these questions, I want to utilize my skill set out of my business side, but still within the healthcare sector or system.
I see. So I'll start with kind of product development. So depending on your hospital and where you're working, you may have an innovation space or a maker space. They have a lot of different names. And so that might be available to you kind of at your fingertips. So I would go to your leadership. If they don't know, do not stop there, right? So this is that boundary spanning that we're talking about. Talk to one of the doctors, right? Usually a lot of these sort of innovation spaces within healthcare systems are very naturally geared toward the physicians and helping them kind of get patents or developing those products. So go and talk with them. They might actually know. If that is not available to you, we just have to start getting curious. So it's a completely, again, every single person is going to have a bit of a different response or need to do slightly different things in order to start getting involved in this space. But what we really need to do, and I was just meeting with someone yesterday talking about some similar pieces, is that we need to just start operating more with curiosity rather than worrying so deeply about the outcome, right? So it's going to be very challenging to immediately just jump to the outcome of being an expert in product development when you're starting from scratch, right? Especially if you don't even know like what products you might want to develop or how to do it, right? You have to get comfortable with failure. You have to get comfortable in spaces that you don't understand, you don't know anything about. You have to start reading books. You have to start listening to podcasts. You have to start diving deeper. And then that is going to be a little nugget that's going to take you. Exactly. It's going to take you to the next thing. There's going to be a little piece of information that's like, oh, I didn't know about that. I'm going to go check that out. And then you have to be curious and you have to go and check that out. And you're going to find the path for yourself. Though I would say for anybody because what I have discovered is that there's a lot of people who are like, I don't care about making the product. I don't care if I have a patent. I don't care if my name is on it. But I'm seeing all of these problems that have to be solved. Can I just give those problems to somebody, right? And so in that instance, I would say, depending on the problem, but yes, right? So like me, for example, like I want to know about the problems in healthcare that do not have solutions today, right? Go on LinkedIn, right? Find my name, ping me, just get comfortable cold calling people. I'm very comfortable doing that. You're very comfortable doing that, right? You have to just, you got to do it. Like, what are they going to say? No, big deal. It's behind the internet. You can forget about it 2 seconds later. And start having those conversations. And then they're going to say either, yes, this makes sense, or no, but I do know of someone that I can introduce you to, and they might know someone there. So it might not be the direct line answer that you're hoping for. But to me, it's the best one.
Yeah, and
It's the most authentic.
thank you for bringing this on the table. Yeah, as I mentioned, I came across your live and connect with you. You are aware, very supportive, open, friendly. And as you can see, the theme of the podcast, it's extremely friendly. I never met Whitney. I would like to meet you in person. And this is where the beauty, and you mentioned if I ask someone and they cannot help me, maybe they introduce me for someone else. And that happened with me as a good story to share here. I have my friend. So she told me, Anas, I think you need to meet that person, a friend of mine and friend of you, but it's good for you to be on the podcast. I told her, I know her, but maybe it's good for you to recommend her for me. Do you mind to introduce me to her? So she did join call and we discussed together. When she know what I'm doing, that potential guest to be on my podcast, she told me, Anas, I know someone, okay, because you are in the Canada and he is in Canada, he will be a good fit for your own business. So now out of the podcast. So when I sit with him, he told me, listen, we are aligned, but we cannot work together. You know, I want to introduce you the end story for that, he introduced for me now more than 9 person, make them my friend, my believer, my support for sake of this kind of collaboration. So I can see all of this happening. And every time I learn, and you mentioned, watch a podcast, be curious, read, and do all of those things. And you mentioned also the network. So what other resource or habit have you helped you the most of your journey? You think more than what you have shared with us?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind, and one is, kind of to trail off what we were just mentioning, which is that getting comfortable being uncomfortable, right? I spent a lot of time in my life not being comfortable being uncomfortable, right? I was always very worried that I was maybe going to not come off as smart enough, right? And once I finally got over that, it's like the whole world kind of opened up for me, right? And you now is like, especially when you're in the early stages of wanting to jump into a different industry, and it's not transitioning industries necessarily, it's pulling pieces into yours. You don't know anything about that industry. Why would you ever expect yourself to be an expert in a space that you don't know anything about and that you've never experienced before, right? So you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable and navigating around those pathways. And then the second piece that really supported me, or that was really supportive in my, I guess, kind of journey to where I am now and where I'm hoping to continue to grow to, is I would call myself, and then I think others like you, others that are probably listening to this podcast, I call my HILers. That's the group that my DNP cohort was, were health, innovation, and leadership. And we're called these multi-potentialites, right? So you're people that, again, you're never comfortable with the status quo. You're kind of always investigating and digging to find the truth and find the answers. And you're also someone who, put me in anything and I'm going to succeed. Put me somewhere and I'm going to, excel, because you kind of hold those qualities. And so it's really easy to tumble through life into the next opportunity that's in front of you. And then you're going to wake up one day going, I don't like any of this stuff. Like, how did I get here? And so really identifying what your core central sort of pillars or values are to your life, and then really trying to focus on the synergies that can happen in between those, makes such a powerful role, position the life around you in ways that are difficult for me to describe. And so I would just say, like my pillars, kind of my core values, and I think these evolve over time, but they're pretty central. But it's, for me, it's about exploration, right? Constantly seeking new things. What's new? What's out there? That's just something that's core to who I am. That's never going to go away. It's always been there. Travel, right? Finding new places, going to other areas. And so that can show up in a multitude of ways. But when I know that, my primary role of whatever kind of job I do for the predominant parts of my week, being in a role that is maybe only centered in my community, that doesn't allow me to get out and travel the world, isn't gonna sustain me for very long, right? So that's why I'm in a global position. Comfort, home, my family, that's another piece that's absolutely core and central to who I am. So when these things come about and these opportunities, if they don't fit in to these sort of central core values, then it gets dropped and it doesn't get accepted, right? And especially as you continue to find the synergies that are happening between these, you're going to have more and more pieces that are coming toward you. And if it doesn't fit, it has to go. And so aligning in that manner was, again, really powerful to get me to where I am and then allow me to go where I'm hoping to be able to continue to grow into. And it might not look beautiful and perfect for somebody else, but it doesn't matter. But it's because it's authentic and central to my being.
What incredible advices. I ran a lot, and every time when I have guests, every time I see a new advice, a new way to handle a different matter in the life and how we can grow. And yeah, I see how you are curious to discover new things, and this is embedded with you where you are here in innovation and product management. And I can understand and imagine how many challenging communication you had in the past. So good for you. Now, with me, I would like to let everyone know what you had achieved this year. This year, you graduated from your doctoral degree, and you have it. I watch your speech. I like it a lot. It's very impressive and it's inspiring. And I will with the podcast. So here, before we get about your degree, I want to just once here read and quote from you. But we are standing inside a fractured moment. And as they saying goes, never let a good crisis go to the waste. This is our opportunity to build what once thought impossible. What a lovely. So you put this is as a part from your speech and you put it on the LinkedIn, and you graduated this year from Minnesota School of Nursing on medical innovation, just to make sure. Yeah, on leading change and innovate in healthcare. So can you please give us more insight about your program and why you decided for that? You are very successful. Why you need to have an additional degree? And is the additional degree something it's a must to be very successful, or what?
Well, thank you, first of all. I appreciate that. And thank you for watching the commencement speech. It was a really incredible point in my career. And it was kind of this culmination of bringing my personal life, my bit of my private life and my professional life sort of all together and sort of putting it out there for everybody to take a look at. So it was a very vulnerable but proud moment for me. So I appreciate that a lot. I will say, yes, I received my DNP, my doctorate in nursing practice from University of Minnesota this year. And my degree, so at the University of Minnesota, there's a multitude of tracks, right, that you can choose from. So most people are familiar with the more practice specific, right? So adult gerontological, anesthesiology, women's health, gender affirming studies, etc. I knew that I wanted to advance my degree. I knew that I did not want to do direct patient care. Where my career that was headed didn't make a lot of sense, right? So again, there wasn't as much synergy there in the things that I was doing. And I wanted to just kind of I don't want to say a bigger impact as if that's a lesser impact, but I wanted to make a different impact. And so I stumbled upon this health innovation and leadership track at the University of Minnesota. And actually, it was a previous professor of mine had mentioned it to me. And I thought, I can't do that. I can't be a doctor, right? I was going to go and kind of get my master's, or I don't know what I was going to do. So I just had an informational session with a Dr. Teddy Potter, who is transitioning out of the University of Minnesota. So she's leading their climate change and planetary health initiatives. She's phenomenal. If you ever get an opportunity to meet with her or hear her speak, and ultimately, the whole health innovation and leadership track is about creating change. So it's at its core, it's a quality improvement, degree, but it's really about identifying the places that need change and then giving you the tools so that you can go out and create the change, no matter how huge or how small it is. And that's kind of just putting it very simply. Absolutely loved my time in this DNP program. I would recommend it to anybody that is interested in advancing, and especially within kind of innovation or problem solving, or people that are identifying those problems and saying, I know that I can go and fix it. I just don't exactly know how. I now feel after 3 years that whatever problem I see in front of me that I want to put the energy towards solving, I feel very confident that I can take the steps to go and solve those problems. And then also have this really deep network of like-minded individuals, unique like-minded individuals to be able to pull from as well.
Wonderful. Now let's move for this questions and answer me as a doctor of NDB. So as a DNB doctor, I want from you to tell me in health innovation and leadership, what the trends or technology it's more excited about for the future along with the AI. So we know AI it's the era right now, but what you see the trend in the future?
Well, I see nurses becoming much more involved in any and every type of care advancement that's going to be taking place. We understand that there's a significant workforce shortage, and the only way that that is going to be solved is through changing processes, protocols, procedures, but really crafting a different way to provide care. And the only way to do that is to, again, we're going back to human-centered design, which is pull those people in who are actually providing that direct care and help them craft what that's going to look like. And so we get sort of stuck in this idea that innovation is only about products or tangible goods. And innovation, I see in this next stage, is even more so about the processes, the tools, the way that we're delivering care, doing it in different spaces, different places, different platforms, and really being led by nursing. That's really where I see and where I hope to continue to see the future of healthcare going. But talking about technology, all I'm hearing about constantly is wearables, 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 wearables. All kinds of different wearables to track everything from, your sugars to your sweat to your sleep to everything about you. And when I think about that, so love it, great, but I think about the informatics piece of it and the data infrastructure. And so we have so much data at our fingertips. We have so much quantitative and qualitative data at our fingertips. And the biggest challenges that I'm seeing are the inability to really effectively do things with it that are going to kind of move the needle or help us make decisions. So I see those kind of two pieces as significant opportunities for nurses to really start to dive into. Those are huge needs.
So what skill set should the next generation of the healthcare leader focus on drive this real change? So we have a lot of data there and ability to connect them.
Yeah. I see data management, data infrastructure, and it's like, again, constantly kind of going back to this idea of you have things, you have information that is very technical, very challenging, right? How do you distill it down into something that is digestible, that's meaningful, and that's actionable? So whether that's through your numbers or your data, whether that's, through a regulatory piece of information that's coming out, whatever it may be, that is what is absolutely needed. So practicing those skills, which nurses are very good at doing, right? We learned it in my undergrad called living room language, right? So the doctor just gave us something very challenging and, very confusing. The patient doesn't know what's going on. So you turn around and you distill it in a way that is easy for them to understand. So it's taking that skill that you do every single day, but now you're translating it. So you're kind of spanning that boundary into, I would see, data. So informatics, get comfortable with AI, get comfortable with tech, at least so you can speak the language and that it can get you to the next stage of whatever it is that you're doing until you can work with the expert on it. That's another piece that I've found when I'm working on a lot of these like more grassroots projects. You you don't get to have all of the perfect experts on your team when you're in the grassroots project. You only get to have those experts on your team when your project is really well funded and you're kind of all the way up here. When you're down here and you're more of the startup, you have to wear all of those hats. So having at least some foundational knowledge of how data infrastructure works, how your computing systems kind of hang together so that you can, one, just speak your needs, as well as then be able to kind of execute to put those prototypes together to be able to have your creation better understood. So again, it's kind of going back again to like that boundary spanning, but I see it a lot with the technology pieces. And I kind of say that reluctantly, like, I know it can be hard and maybe my age is showing where I'm like, I don't want to learn a new thing, but you have to.
Absolutely.
Too bad.
This is the ugly truth. You have to. There is no choice. And this is the cycle of the life. Every time there is a new things came and we need to adapt. This is the same thing happened when the internet evolved and where the previous generation they need say I don't. I got across some example how we as human program to resist any change. So there is a story about when they discover and innovate the calculator, how they say it is something is not good and we don't need alarm also when they create the alarm because they eliminate a lot of job in the past. So there is, and the lists go on and on. At the end of the podcast, Whitney, I know you spread a lot of advices for the next generation and they are lovely. Myself, I learned a lot from them. Do you think is there anything else you need to share with them or just you remember before we call it off?
There's one more piece. And I find myself again saying this a lot to some of the people that are closest to me that I'm mentoring, which is, gosh, you already have all of the tools within you that you need to get to the next place. You've already got it. Go into the next place because you want to go there because you're curious about it. You already have what you need to get there.
No excuse.
I know. Too bad. Again, sorry. Too bad. You've already got it. You just have to put one foot in front of the other and go do it.
Thank you, Whitney, for that. And I would like to stay forever with you, but we need to close our episode. And before I close this episode, I have a question for you from my previous guest. My previous guest was Jasmine Bonder. She have a question for you. What make you happy in your life?
It goes back to those pillars that I just talked about, right? When I get to find the synergies between those. Right now, in this summer, I live in Minnesota. So our summers are pretty short and pretty dear. And so now that I have this little bit of headspace, now that I've graduated and I got rid of that full-time job of being a doctoral student, I am enjoying my summer. I'm enjoying, the space to be able to watch my kids play baseball and softball and all of the pieces that they do, and that I have a little bit of time to take some vacations here and there. And that really is what's bringing me the joy.
Wonderful. So what is your question for my next guest? I don't know who will be, but give me a question for my next guest.
I'm now telling myself, don't overthink it, but I'm gonna. What was the last real challenge that you had, and what did you do to overcome it?
You like challenge everywhere, even with your question.
No, I can't help it.
Okay.
It's
lovely.
Fun. It should be fun.
Whitney, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward also to bring you back with some new news and some new technology, patent to share with us, whatever. So we cannot get enough from you, but we have to leave you today. Thank you, Whitney. See you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
If this episode sparked something in you, here's how you can keep our mission alive. Subscribe to Uncharted Narratives Surdiyat. Leave us a 5-star review. It helps more amazing people discover our stories. Share an episode that moved you with a colleague or friend. Connect with me on LinkedIn and join our healthcare innovation community. Together, we're not just telling stories. Until next time, stay curious, stay passionate, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in healthcare. See you in the next episode of Uncharted Narratives Surdiyat.